the Office of Student Assignment. And please continue to contribute to the exchange that I just mentioned and rate your thoughts on important topics up until July 28th. A full summary of all the feedback received from the community will be shared with the board during a meeting later this summer. Finalmente, si necesita ayuda en español, por favor, envíe un correo electrónico at studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to our presenter for the evening, Mr. Glenn Carrozza. Glenn, are you ready to get us started?
I am. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Louis, for welcoming all of us tonight, and thank you to all of our participants for joining us this evening. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you the information about how the district addresses school utilization concerns, particularly how we address multi-track year-round schools in areas where the long-term projections no longer support the need for the additional seats in the area. So tonight we'll be looking at, we'll be conducting a public engagement session to gather input and feedback from families and community members regarding the recommended school change to traditional for North Forest Pines Elementary for the 2027-28 school year. So let's take a moment and review the goals for today's session. We're here to review the process for Wake County School staff follow when addressing long-term planning solutions, specifically for North Forest Pines Elementary. We'll review information related to projected enrollment growth, school crowding, and current facilities plans in the area. And we'll review information related to a recommendation to change the school calendar for North Forest Pines Elementary to traditional calendar for the 27-28 school year. In addition, we encourage you to contribute to the ongoing thought exchange discussion by sharing your thoughts and ideas about important factors for the district to consider when addressing long-term planning needs for the area.
I'm sorry, Glenn, before you continue, we want to remind you that you may have joined late, just like I just joined late. I apologize. That all of the information we shared tonight is on our website. Also, we are using the Q&A feature to capture questions throughout tonight's session. We will work to respond to answer as many of your questions as we can as we get towards the end of the session. So the end of the session will be used to answer your questions. We will also use your questions to update the FAQ section of our website. To ensure your questions are anonymous, we will capture them privately. And when you notice that your question has been removed from the queue, that means one of our moderators has taken note of it, captured it, and your question has been submitted successfully. All right. Glenn?
All right. Thank you, Louis. You want to skip to the next slide for me?
Sure, and I'm sorry, and here's the QA feature that I was just speaking of. Sorry about that. That's the visual of the QA feature that we'll be using.
So we're here to talk about the planning process that School Choice uses for addressing long-term crowding concerns across the district. There's a 6-step process that we use, and I'm going to go through that with you today. Many of you may have seen some of these slides and this information before in previous presentations, but for the sake of people who may be just chiming in today for the first time, I'd like to just go through those briefly before we get to the questions of our session today. So the school choice planning process, we have 6 steps. And on the next slide, we'll show you that today we're at step 6, right? We start with an annual forecast, then we do our projected crowding. We review the capital improvement plan, which is known as the CIP. We'll do an annual enrollment plan, which is the student assignment plan that you often have heard of. And then we review our CAP schools, and then we address other school utilization concerns. So these are areas that are not addressed during the capital improvement plan or during the student assignment plan, but we still have crowding concerns or issues to address throughout the district. So step 1 is the annual membership forecast. Wake County staff works with municipal partners to collect information and data for growth concerns over the next 10 years in the areas. We then work with a third-party vendor to generate a forecast for the district that helps us with our long-term planning needs. Here you have a comparison from last year's forecast and this year's forecast. The map on the left represents 2024 through 2033, the 10-year forecast that was projected. The blue arrows represent areas where we expect the projected enrollment to change positively in those particular areas. And the red arrows represent a negative or a negative change in the student enrollment in that area. So as you can see on the left and on the right, we have particular areas of the county that are expected to grow tremendously and other areas where we don't expect long-term growth, at least over the next 10 years. So step 2 in our process then is to project the crowding for the upcoming school year so that we can participate in our application windows. You have the magnet application window, you have the hardship transfer window, and we have student movement that goes along with that. Then we have projected enrollments that we use in order to fill those seats at those particular schools. And then we use that facility planning for our capital improvement plan and our annual enrollment plan. So the projected crowding for 25-26 looks as such. The map on the top left is the elementary schools projected crowding for 25. The bottom map in the middle is middle schools, and the map on the top right is high schools. So to understand this map, the areas that are in red or orange are projected to be overcrowded. The orange are schools that are projected to be 100 to 110% crowded, and the red are schools that are projected to be over 110% crowded. The areas in yellow are our ideal area. That is 90 to 100% crowded. That area is a good number for us because if you have enrollment increases in particular grades, so let's say you generally have 70 kindergartners at your elementary school come in every year, and then the next year you have 110 come in, you have a spike. That extra capacity allows for that bubble to come through without having to sacrifice some of your other areas to not have classrooms, such as maybe putting art on a cart. The areas in white are areas that are projected to be underutilized. So as you can see in the north area where North Forest Pines is on the top part of the map, we don't have projected crowding at any of the schools in that particular area. So as part of the capital improvement plan, we build new schools and we renovate new schools as part of that process. Here we have a map that shows where we're expecting to build new schools that are designated by the circles over the next 7 years. You can see many of those schools correlate with the map that I showed earlier where we have our high growth. Most of the schools are either in the west, the southwest, or south, and then again in the east. And this chart just shows you what the circles were on the last map. We're opening 4 new schools for the 25-26 school year: Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains, Rex Road, and Felton Grove. And then Hilltop Needmore, which will be built in 25-26, will have its own students in 26-27. It'll be serving as a swing space for a renovation for Fuquay Elementary. Then in 27-28, we have a high school opening up in Morrisville. We have nothing expected to open in 28-29. 29-30, Parkside Middle School will move to their new facility, as will Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies. And then at that same time, Marshburn Road will be built. However, Wendell Elementary will swing into that school site for 2 years while their building gets renovated. In 2030, we have a new school opening on Pool Road. And then in 2031, Marshburn Road, which is in the Wendell area, will open with its own students. So also part of the CIP are our renovation projects. And here you can see on the map, these are the projected schools that we have in our capital improvement plan that will have renovations throughout the next 7 years. And then again, those schools on the chart with the completion year that they're expected to be done with their renovation. So after we go through the annual forecast, the projected crowding for the coming year, the capital improvement plan with our new schools and renovations, then we look at where can we address crowding concerns or other utilization concerns throughout the district through the annual enrollment plan or the student assignment plan. One of the main things that we always look at when we're addressing the capital improvement plan and the student enrollment plan are the CAP schools. These are schools that the enrollment is projected to be extremely high and we don't have enough seats even for the base students who live in the area. So many of those students are capped out or overflowed to a neighboring school that has available seats in the meantime. However, capping puts a tremendous strain on our transportation department. And so therefore the board has directed staff to work towards removing the capped schools so that we don't put the additional strain on our transportation department. As many of you may know, we have a national bus driver shortage, which makes it even harder for us to address concerns like this. And then lastly, where we are today, step 6. And technically what brought us here today is step 3 on this page, where we were looking at identifying schools that are operating on a year-round calendar, but do not have long-term crowding concerns in their area. So as part of that work, we present to the board and then we host engagement sessions for families and school staff to gain additional feedback and insight, or what are some of the things that the school system should consider as we look at the long-term solutions. And then we make recommendations to the board based on the data and feedback collected. So to look at how we got to where we are today, I took the map with the arrows on the left for the forecast and then the crowding map on the right-hand side. And the black dot is a general area of where the base attendance area is for North Forest Pines. It's technically a little bit south and to the east of that. But that general area, you can see there's no long-term crowding concerns with the arrows. And there's also no utilization concerns at the neighboring schools in the area. So to zoom in on that particular map, and I'll start from the west and move to the east. So if you look at where that white little tip sticks out, that's over by the airport. You have Pleasant Grove Elementary, which is a year-round school that's projected to be utilized at 48%. And the reason that is so low is because we just converted it to year-round, and they just had a reassignment change in recent years. Sycamore Creek is at 85%. Briar Creek is at 89%. Those are both year-round schools in the area that are also underutilized. And if you paid attention to the facilities committee meeting that we presented to the board on June 10th, we've talked about some of these other schools on this slide about future concerns of dealing with their lack of growth in the particular area. Then you have Leesville Road at 80%. Barton Pond, 82, Pleasant Union, 81, Bailiwick, 82, Brassfield and Pleasant Union, again, both multi-track year-round schools. North Forest Pines is on there as a multi-track year-round school at 78%. So you can see there's a large number of schools in this particular area that are all underutilized at this time and projected to be underutilized moving forward. So coming up with calendar changes or even reassignment changes, there are always difficult decisions to make by staff, and we do not take those lightly. So a lot of what we do is we check into the research of what's out there for the current, what's the current research say about some of the decisions we're looking to make and how do they impact students? Because really what we're all about is student achievement. And so research shows that a year-round school calendar had essentially no impact on the average test scores when compared to traditional calendar schools. We presented that to the board back in, I think it was April, when we brought in a study from Elon University that we did with Dr. Katie Rouse. And she has some history in the work of multi-track year-round schools. And she and her partners have done research on this particular topic, and they are showing no impact whether you go to a traditional or year-round calendar school. And then another question, does multi-track year-round increase summer learning? We often hear of learning loss. We often hear of year-round schools are better for students. And unfortunately, some of the feedback or all of the research that we're reading right now does not show that year-round calendars increase learning over the course of the entire year, because they don't increase the time that the children spend in school. So those are two main points that we've used as part of our recommendations today. So that leads us to our staff recommendation. And our recommendation to the board was to convert North Forest Pines to traditional for the 27-28 school year. I put a link in this presentation to the June 10th Facilities Committee presentation, so many of you can see what was presented to the board at that time. The main takeaways of why we are making that recommendation is because they're currently operating on a multi-track year-round calendar, and we don't have a need long-term and in the immediate term for the additional seats in the area. Some of the feedback that we've gained over the last several years from families is a request to have calendar alignment, specifically at K-8, but mostly for K-12 if possible. And this particular recommendation would provide families with K-12 calendar alignment. The current base schools for North Forest Pines are Wakefield Middle School and Wake Forest Middle School. And those both operate on the traditional calendar. And then all of the high schools that they feed to are also on the traditional calendar. And then also, as we look at the crowding in other areas around the county where we need to utilize multi-track year-round schools, the funding that would be saved from converting North Forest Pines to traditional, that funding would be allocated to calendar conversions in other high growth areas. Specifically, you're looking at Wendell, Zebulon, Apex, Holly Springs, Fuquay. Or it could be recognized as a reduction in the operating budget.
All right, that was a good amount of information. Thanks, Glenn. We appreciate it. Once again, if you have any questions, please look at the slide that's just been posted. Please use the Q&A feature that's in front of you. We're capturing your questions privately, and we will ensure that they remain anonymous. When you notice that your question has been removed from the queue, once you see it removed after you post it, that means one of our moderators, we have 3 of them tonight, has successfully captured your question, and we'll do our best to get to it at the end of the evening, which we have set aside for answering your questions. At this time, we still have some more information that we'd like Glenn to share with you. So Glenn, I want to hand things back over to you so you can share that additional information. Glenn?
Thank you, Louis. So we've put out a thought exchange, and many of you have participated already, and we really appreciate it. And we encourage you to continue to participate. That will be open, I believe it's until July 28th. So as of July 22nd, I captured some of the information that we've collected so far. So to this point, we had 172 participants in the thought exchange. They generated 240 thoughts, which produced 4,503 ratings, which was an average of 19 ratings per thought. And then the alignment is low. And what that means is the 2 different opposing views of this recommendation. So you could have people who were, yes, we prefer to go traditional, or no, we prefer to stay year round. There wasn't a lot of common ground between the comments. So that's how you see the alignment being low. It's either you're one-sided on either way. And to summarize, and so this summary is based on what the feedback has been given in the thought exchange. This is not, staff cannot verify that any of this information is correct. It just verifies that this was the information that was shared via the thought exchange. And so it summarizes all of it for us. And so what it says is many respondents expressed concerns over changing North Forest Pines from a multi-track year-round to traditional calendar, emphasizing the benefits of year-round schedules in enhancing social emotional learning, mental health, and student achievement. They cite logistical and childcare challenges, potential traffic issues, and misalignment with nearby middle schools. Consistent year-round breaks reportedly reduce summer learning loss, support parent and student schedules, and help mitigate food insecurity risks. Respondents fear staff turnover and urge Wake County schools to consider equitable calendar options and the positive impact on school culture. Many prefer maintaining year-round or adopting a single-track option. So again, that is the information that has been shared through the thought exchange, and we summarized it for you. Please continue to participate in the thought exchange so that we can continue to collect all of that. We plan to present that to the board when we meet with them in August. So this chart here just shows you the different topics that were shared. There are different themes. And all of them are rating above a 4, which means there's high alignment from the people who are rating these. Some of the ones that are really important here, I'll just name a couple. Charter school competition was a concern in some of the comments. Knowledge retention, mental health benefits, and then year-round calendar, meaning I'm assuming they're to preserve the year-round calendar school. So when we get this information, and we share a lot of this with the board, and there were a lot of highly rated thoughts, and so I tried to put as much of it I could on one slide. But just here were some of the highly rated thoughts, and then some other highly rated comments that I generalized. Many of them, we would like to stay year-round. My child learns best on year-round. Many families feel as though their young children are more emotionally stable and happier with more frequent breaks. Year-round schedule benefits students' stamina throughout the year. We prefer North Forest Pines Elementary to stay year-round. Year-round school has been a blessing to our family, allowing vacations throughout the year and breaks that are manageable for 2 working parents. And then again, some other highly rated comments were concern for staff turnover, concerned parents will choose private or charter school, and then there was an assumed increase in childcare costs when on the traditional calendar.
Glenn, thank you once again. Thank you all once again for being here. We're not concluding. I know we've reviewed a lot of information. We want to take a short break. And many of you have shared your specific questions. And as a reminder, we want to work to respond to as many of your questions as possible. And we will update the FAQ portion of our calendar conversion webpage with any questions that we are unable to address this evening. So please continue to use the QA feature to share any new questions that you may have. And once again, just what we're asking you, please make sure that you post your questions. We are going through them right now, and we are saving a portion of this presentation to go through all of these questions with you. So thank you very much. So just please continue to present your questions, and we'll go through them. Okay. All right, so next steps. So I'm sorry, Glenn, I took over your spot there. So we have reached, well, where are we right now, Glenn? I'm sorry.
We're at the question portion. So you back up a couple slides and we'll start to take some questions.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so we've reached the end of our time for you posting questions. If you have any more questions, to take one final moment to do that, please. And we want to thank you for your participation. But before we end tonight's session, we want to basically start going through your questions and answering them. So please take a few moments to ask a couple more questions. We're answering them, taking a look at them, and then we're going to go to our questions. So give us one moment.
While we have a break, I'd like to just share, again, please participate in the thought exchange, provide your feedback so that we can share that with the board. I know there are some staff members joining us as well. There is a separate thread on the thought exchange for staff members so that they can provide their input. And what we will do is when we present to the board, we'll present information from both the staff perspective and the parents' perspective.
Okay, Glenn, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Okay. So here are some of the questions that we have posted here. Glenn, why were families only informed on July 15th about a decision set for August 5th? Does short-term timeline and summer decision-making process allow for meaningful community engagement?
That's a good question. So we presented this information to the board, starting with Lake Myra conversion for the 26-27 school year. And we finalized that on June 3rd. And the board had asked us in the in the June presentation for Lake Myra to get some feedback for 27, 28 and beyond. The reason for this is the board would like the parents to have a 2-year runway when a decision is made so that they have ample time to plan and make any adjustments, because they are aware that changing a school calendar could impact family vacation plans, daycare concerns for staff members. Going from the multi-track year-round calendar to traditional calendar, they no longer get 12 paychecks, so there's an adjustment there for staff. And so the board really wanted to make sure that we got this decision in so that if they did approve a calendar change, that there was ample time for everyone to have time to plan for that.
Okay, Glenn, another question that we received: Forest Pines Drive Elementary School and North Forest Pines Elementary share a campus and a bus loop. How does having 2 identical schools next to each other serve a purpose for our district?
Okay, so the purpose of schools in the district is to provide education to students, right? And the facilities that we have, it doesn't matter what calendar they're on. The calendar type that we use is for capacity purposes only. When we first opened North Forest Pines, we did have growth concerns in the Wake Forest area that we needed an additional capacity. And so when we built that school site, we were able to put 1 year-round school on the site and 1 traditional calendar school on the site. With regards to sharing a bus loop, there is no proposed change to the start and end times of either schools. So they still would have the ability to start and end at different times, so there wouldn't be any traffic concerns when the 2 schools are operating. Another important point that I think people need to understand is land is really hard to come by in Wake County, especially to build schools. You need over 20 acres of land for an elementary school, and it's hard to find, especially in high growth areas. And so at the time when we purchased that piece of property, we were able to be creative and find a way to put 2 schools on the site and limit our impact, our footprint on the area, and then gain the extra seats. And so while not ideal having 2 schools on one site on the same calendar, it doesn't prevent us from being able to accomplish our goal, which is to educate students.
Thank you, Glenn. So this is a third question related to proposed changes and process. If you are removing year-round schools from the north part of Wake County, will there still be options to choose a year-round alternative schools locally? And will we provide buses?
It's a good question. So because we have transportation concerns, the days of calendar options are diminishing. We are not able to provide transportation to schools that are not the base in certain areas because we just don't have the additional buses to do it. Some schools still have calendar options because we're able to, we're forced to continue to do so, because if we change the calendar option, we don't have the available capacity at the school if all the students were sent back. And so that's why we'll still continue to have some calendar options. With regards to year-round schools, families can apply to any school in the county. So if it's on traditional or year-round, they can still apply to it. We just don't provide transportation to every school.
All right, thank you, Glenn. So I'm going to go to a facilities question if I can. How many students at North Forest Pines are base assigned versus opted in? I know that's a tough one to ask, but if the year-round option is removed, how will it affect under enrollment at the school?
So that's a good question. So I don't have the exact numbers about how many are base assigned as opposed to how many calendar application kids are attending. But what we generally do in this particular situation is this. When we change a school's calendar, any student who's there as a calendar application student, so if your base is traditional and you are applying and attending there because it's year-round, you would be assigned back to your base school because the school is no longer year-round, your base is traditional, so therefore you would be assigned back to your base school. However, with that in mind, the district has been very generous with their stability rules, and I anticipate we would, well, I know we would recommend that the stability rules allow for any student who's attending the school currently to be able to remain, to transfer back and remain until until they finish their 5th grade year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Glenn, another question for facilities. The operating cost of a single track elementary school is the same cost as a traditional calendar elementary school. Instead of removing the year-round option entirely, why not explore solutions like moving to a single track 4 maybe?
That's a great option. And that's something certainly we're going to present to the board because we've heard that loud and clear when we met with the staff. It's not, I don't think it's 100% true that it's exactly the same cost as a traditional, but we're continuing to look at that. But I don't think it's a significant difference. So that could be an option that the board could consider. The reason why we didn't use that as our recommendation to this point, because the board had asked us to look at stability for families, long-term stability. And with that meaning, calendar alignment as much as possible. We've had to change some school calendars in the recent years. We changed Pine Hollow Middle School and Rollsville Middle School from multi-track to traditional. And the board didn't like the fact that we didn't also change the elementaries that feed to them. However, because of K-3 class size legislation, we need multi-track year-round seats in certain areas. And it's not easy for us to just convert a school because we just can't fit more kids in the building because of that legislation. So we've tried to be intentional about making recommendations for aligning those calendars as much as possible. If you go back and look at the June 10th presentation, the heritage schools were on there as well. And the reason why some of them didn't make this particular discussion are because they have feeder schools that are projected to be overcrowded or full or wouldn't be able to be converted to a traditional calendar at this time. So staff has to look at some other solutions to pair with that before we make that recommendation. Similar for Sycamore Creek and Briar Creek as well.
Okay, thank you. So Glenn, Heritage Middle School is a multi-track year-round calendar, which North Forest Pine feeds into. Has this been considered? Are there going to be enough options if our school gets changed to traditional?
So I just want to clarify something. I know that some parents have the option to apply to Heritage out of North Forest Pines, but there are no base assignments from North Forest Pines to Heritage. Many parents can apply and actually get a transfer, but there's no guarantee that we approve those transfers. If we do have a calendar change, it would be even harder for North Forest Pines families to get into Heritage Middle School because they'll have no need for that particular alignment. I anticipate that to be the same, even if it's track 4. The board really understands that we don't have the capacity to continue to align calendars as much as people would like. And especially with the long-term or lack of long-term crowding needs in the particular area, there's going to be some tough decisions by the board in order to meet those needs.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Glenn. Another facilities question. So what is the cost difference? Is there a cost difference for operating a single track versus year-round versus traditional schools? Is there a cost savings, a difference?
So there is a cost savings. I can't give you the exact number for the elementaries. I know at the middle school level for the 2 schools, it was about $250,000 per school. Okay. Generally, what you're seeing is some staff on a multi-track year-round calendar get paid 11 or 12 months. And if the school is on a traditional calendar, they would no longer need to be paid those additional months. So there are particular savings there for the operating budget of the district.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So do we know how many, I guess say that with respect to base population or folks who have chosen North Forest Pine as their calendar choice, do we know how many students are base population or as opposed to how many have chosen it for their year-round option?
I don't have that data with me, but that's something we can create and put in an FAQ for families. Obviously, that number changes day by day, but we can give a general point in time percentage. We can do that.
Okay, thank you. So another question, has staff our staff or the board accounted for the potential loss potentially of families to charter, private, or other options if the choice for year-round is ultimately taken away from this area?
That's something we'll present to the board. I mean, I think that's really important for them to consider. I think when you look at the responses we're getting from families, it's unfortunate that changing a school calendar would force families to seek other options outside of Wake County. We have a great school system. North Forest Pines is a great school. I don't think that it's only great because of the calendar that it's on, but I do understand and respect the fact that families prefer a particular calendar that works for their lifestyle. But the best we can do is we have capacity concerns in other parts of the district, and they cost us money in order to operate those schools on a year-round calendar. And where we don't need year-round for the capacity purposes, the board has asked us to look at ways to take that money and shift it to the areas that are high growth. I just want to kind of share people with the year-round schooling as well, why we utilize year-round schools. Year-round schools, when operated at the appropriate level, they provide us an opportunity to have 25% more students in the building. And so when we do that and we open up 4 elementary schools on the multi-track year-round calendar and we utilize them fully, it saves us from building a 5th elementary school. And so at the current cost of about $130 million to build an elementary school, that's significant savings for the district the more that you utilize that in our high growth areas.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Glenn. So I'm looking, we have some of the questions that are similar to what we've seen already. So what if we are removing year-round schools from the northern part of Wake County altogether? Will there still be options to choose from for any families in that particular regions to have a year-round alternative that's local? I know we've asked that already, and I'm sorry if I'm
I think I can elaborate differently, right? I did talk about how families can apply to any year-round school. In that particular area, I would say that the most proximate year-round schools that I anticipate to stay long-term based on the projected forecast at this time, you're looking at schools in the eastern Rollsville area. And then again, as you get into Zebulon and then eventually Wendell, those are areas that you'll generally have more year-round because you have the high growth in those particular areas. But when you look at that map and the forecast, we have a lot of underutilized schools in the north. Long ago, like mid to late 90s, early 2000s, this particular area was exploding in growth. And that's why we converted a lot of schools, specifically back in 2006. Many of them had been converted to multi-track to deal with that explosive growth. But over time, we've just lost the need for the additional growth in the area. A lot of that has to do with you're in the watershed area, Lake Falls Lake area. So it really limits the amount of new residential growth that can come to the area. And so that coupled with the aging out of neighborhoods just doesn't require us to need the year-round calendar long-term.
Okay. And Glenn, there's a lot of questions surrounding just track 4 only, single track. I'm going to try to see if I can summarize this all together. It just says, does moving North Forest Pines to a single track possibly solve these concerns? Track 4 seems to be the largest anyway. How realistic is it that we may consider just doing a single track 4, since that is the largest track?
Well, I mean, I'd never say never, right? I think it's a legit concern. I think you've got parent feedback that stresses that they prefer year-round calendar. I've heard that loud and clear from staff as well. I mean, when you move into an area and you pick a home, a lot of families look at the school, and if that's the school calendar they like, they'll move to that particular area. And we recognize that. Same thing with staff. When you're looking for a job, you're looking for a school calendar that fits your preference. And so many staff members have tried to work at that school because of the particular calendar. So again, we respect that. It's just really difficult because when the board is getting feedback from the public at large that says, hey, we want calendar alignment, it's difficult because then we would be proposing track 4 only for elementary, and then they go to traditional middle, traditional high. Track 4 only is easier than maybe, let's say, a track 1, 2, or 3 when it comes to aligning with traditional calendar. So I'm told from parents. The days don't always match up exactly, but it seems to be easier according to parents. But I think just it's a difficult recommendation for us to make because you're still going to have that stability. We won't be able to guarantee families, if we stay on track 4, we won't be able to guarantee families a seat at a multi-track or track 4 only middle school. And so it just becomes very disruptive for families because they may not have the ability to have at least their K-8 kids on the same calendar. And I know that's important to families.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. So another question, good question. If this change is approved, how will we manage, how will the district manage keeping the enrollment up plus keeping it sufficiently staffed? I would guess many students and staff would potentially leave. Have you heard, or has that information made its way to you that's a possibility?
So we did speak with staff, and obviously you've got some questions that staff have shared and concerns about, hey, I came to work on this particular calendar, I may not stay. That's certainly an expected response. And so I think, going to the question, how do you keep enrollment up? I think the best thing that we can do as a school system in order to keep enrollment up at school is to keep it as a high quality school. And I trust the leadership at the school to continue to do a great job and continue to make it a place where parents want to send their kids because they're getting a great experience. Wake County schools are great schools. Many people would die to come to school here. And it's apparent when you look at the success that we have long term. If parents choose, because of a calendar to go to a different school, that is something we'll have to continue to look at. We haven't had calendar data to look at either staff movement or parent movement as much because we didn't do calendar conversions really since 2006. But we have started in the last 2 years, and we're starting to monitor that data. The first staff data that we're going to be able to look at is Pleasant Grove, which we did 2 years ago. And so we'll continue to monitor that. We'll be looking at Pine Hollow and Rollsville for this particular year. And then that'll be an additional data point that we'll share with the board moving forward. But it's not data that we've tracked as of yet.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. So many of the students that have opted in via the application process to receive a seat at North Forest Pines actually have Forest Pines as their base school. Have we considered as a district how this may affect overcrowding at Forest Pines or worsen under enrollment at North Forest Pines? I mean, are we going to see extreme overcrowding at Forest Pines once we change this calendar to traditional, and then those families opt to go back? Is that a possibility?
Good question. And I think the benefit of having 2 years before this change would be implemented allows us the opportunity to look at the data and determine, do we need a student assignment decision to be made in order to help balance the schools in the particular area. So that's something the Office of Student Assignment will continue to look at over the next several years, because that is something we can do to help balance the schools. I know in another particular area, Pleasant Union, another school that we're looking at, they're kind of, I think it's 81% crowded at this point. So if we converted them to traditional, they would be a little over 100%. And so some of the concerns there were, well, we may be too crowded to go traditional. And so do we look at utilizing some of the additional neighborhoods to send to neighboring schools? Because again, as you saw on the map, a lot of the neighboring schools in the area are all underutilized. So we would do our best to try to balance all the schools in the area.
All right, Glenn, we have a lot of energy around this question. You've answered it a little bit, but I'm going to see if I can just simplify and maybe blend some of these questions together. How do we increase the enrollment, the amount of students that can attend a school? What's the difference between a traditional calendar and a single track 4 calendar? Is there a difference with the amount of kids that we can fit in a brick and mortar school with those two different configurations?
So traditional calendar and track 4 only when you look at the building capacity model that we use, they would have the same exact capacity. A multi-track year-round school roughly adds about 200 seats to a school because you can fit about 25% more kids. So if the school's built to about 600 to 700, about 200 kids would give it that extra capacity of 200. So for this particular example, what did I say? North Forest Pines was at 74%. So assuming all the students would remain, if we converted it to traditional, they would be, I want to say, in the 95%, 100% range. So they'd be right around full capacity. That would give us some wiggle room if some students don't utilize the stability rules, but certainly something we would want to look at.
Okay. And Glenn, is it true that a traditional calendar elementary school and an elementary school opening up on a single track would receive the same allotment ratios? Is that true?
That's a good question. I'd have to double check with our budget and finance department. That's a question. If we can star that and put that in an FAQ for families, that would be great. But when we look at allotment, I would assume, I'm not going to do that. Let's make sure that we get the correct answer and get that information out to staff.
Okay, we have a family shared that they have spoken to, the budget in Wake County. So we'll double check just to get that information for you. So that's a good question. So we'll double check that. Okay. So once North Forest Pines changed to traditional, are there going to be assignment changes with respect to those that are there on a year-round calendar right now that have Norris Pine as their calendar application but not their base school? Will there be an option to stay?
Can you repeat that question just so I make sure I understand it?
So once the calendar is changed to a traditional school, and I have students that are assigned there as year-round application students, do they have the option to stay if their base school is not North Forest Pines?
Okay. Yeah, we touched on this earlier. So we would recommend, or we are going to recommend, very generous stability rules. So any student who is there that is non-base, they would be recommended to allow to remain with the stability rules through their exit grade. The only caveat would be is that we wouldn't provide district bus transportation.
Okay. All right, Glenn, here's a comment, and I think this speaks to the region and the county. I mean, these folks are concerned because, there's great class sizes. The class size ratios at North Forest Pines are, in this person's opinion, they're wonderful, and we're saying they're underutilized. Are we projecting that, increasing the class size ratio is, by creating a traditional calendar is going to improve the school or help the school in any way?
I don't know if there's a direct correlation by changing the calendar that will make the school the classrooms more crowded. As I shared earlier, there are limits for class sizes in K through 3. You have 18 at kindergarten, 16 at first, 17 at second, 17 at third. I guess according to that math, you could see some increases in 4th and 5th grade class sizes. But again, it all depends on the number of students that are attending the school. Based on that number, that allots the number of teachers that they would get, and then that dictates the class sizes. Principals do have some flexibility about their staffing plans that could help with that. So if that is a concern, we can certainly share those concerns with the principal as they consider staffing plans moving forward.
Okay. And now, we had some comments that parents sharing could not get in. Do they need a Google account to access? I mean, they do need to enter via the Google Meet. So, I think they believe they would need a Google account. Is that correct?
I assume so. But yeah. I'll say this. We are recording this event. We can make sure that we put this in the principal newsletter. So if the principal's on the call today, we'll make sure that we get a copy of this to her so that she can share this with her families as well, so that families can access it. Families can always access all of these materials at wcpss.net/calendar conversion. That's a great website. We shared it earlier, and I think we'll share it one more time before we close. But that's a great place where you can go see all of the presentations to date that have been made, This one in particular will be there, the recording, the links to the thought exchange, any other data and information that's relevant to the decision-making process. We try to put it all in one place for families to access so they can have all of the resources at their fingertips.
Okay. Thank you. And that's great because you answered the next question, where will the recording be available? So we'll definitely put that up for you folks to be able to view and take a look at. Glenn, I know you referenced some of the studies earlier from McMullen and Rose and Von Hippel and Graves studies in regard to student achievement and summer learning impacts of traditional versus year-round schools. Is there any way that we can have access to those? Are there clickable links or pages that we can visit and review those studies ourselves?
Yeah, so they'll be embedded in this particular presentation, so they'll be able to get that. We will also make sure that we add them as separate links to the calendar conversion website as well. We'll put that up there for parents to be able to review as well.
Okay. And Glenn, this family wanted to ask, to clarify, you're sharing our input to the board, but has this already been determined? Is there any way that, we may remain year round, or is this decision just based on where the district is going and the lack of, just the lack of crowding, for a better word, the under-enrolled school? Has this been determined already? Is there any chance North Forest Pines stays year round?
That's a great question. And I've also gotten that from the staff when I met with the staff. And I'll be very clear, no final decision has been made, right? The board votes on this and they make the final decision. So the board has not voted yet. So therefore there is no final decision. Staff has made a recommendation to the board to go traditional based on the feedback and direction of the board, where they asked us, look at areas where we don't need multi-track year-round schools so that we can utilize those funds to put them in place where we have high growth and we can't afford to continue to build new schools. So that's how North Forest Pines came to be a part of this discussion. They also shared with us, try to find ways at the same time to look at stability for families when it comes to their feeder patterns. So that means, your elementary schools, are they feeding to the same middle schools? Because they often get a lot of transfer requests, a lot of appeals with parents with mismatched calendars, and they want to ensure that they're providing that stability for families long term. However, the feedback I've received to date from staff and what I've read so far through the thought exchange, there is a high energy around wanting to stay on the year-round calendar, if at least single track. And that's something we'll share with the board. I don't anticipate it'll be part of the staff recommendation, but we will certainly make sure that that information is shared with the board so that they consider that as part of their final decision.
Thank you, Glenn. And once again, just a question related to the board and them voting on this topic. Will there be an open board meeting, in other words, open to the public, where this is discussed with respect to this decision?
Yeah, so I anticipate, and I'm not 100% certain that'll happen, but I anticipate we're going to bring to the board, we're definitely bringing it to the board during a work session on August 5th. At that point, the board could vote at that meeting that evening. So the earliest the board would vote on this is the August 5th board meeting. Board meetings are open to the public. Parents do have the ability to come and speak. They do limit the number of speakers, but they do have a sign up that parents can access to provide themselves an opportunity to come speak at that board meeting. I can't stress enough how important it is for parents to put their feedback in the thought exchange, because again, this will be the information that I'm going to share with the board that outlines the staff and the parent feedback with regards to the recommendation that staff has made at this point. And when I say staff recommendation, I mean the Office of School Choice, not the school staff.
All right, thank you, Glenn. So Glenn, it looks like final question here. Will there be another community session, another community engagement session where, the public will have the opportunity to ask questions, possibly in person or just maybe a different format from what we're seeing tonight? We just want to make sure that our questions are being heard and answered, which I know we've communicated. We're going to be looking at every one of them. Those that are not being answered tonight, or some of those repeats, we're still going to put them in the thought exchange, the Q&A, and we're going to go through each and every one of them. We are diligent when going through those questions. So will there be another community engagement session planned for the future?
We do not have one planned at this time. So that would be the only session we have. Again, parents can provide their feedback on the thought exchange. If they've got questions or concerns, we can look at building an FAQ to put up on the site. Not really sure how else we can engage the public. We don't have another session planned. Certainly not a face-to-face session. In the past, we've done face-to-face question and answer sessions, and they tend to devolve into being a session that's not really beneficial for all. And so what we tend to do is we do sessions like this where parents put in their questions and then we answer them through this format.
Okay. Well, Glenn, thank you for answering all those questions. So folks, we really appreciate you coming out tonight. We've reached the end of our time for questions, and we want to thank you for your participation. Before we end tonight's session, we want to share a few items that are coming up next in our planning process. These next steps in the process will be to complete the public engagement activities that Glenn talked about and to present feedback, along with a final recommendation to the board at a future board meeting, which Glenn did speak about. We are anticipating that the presentation will take place at the board's work session and meeting scheduled for August 5th. Glenn, is that correct? Is that accurate? Do we think that's going to be an accurate timeline?
That is. So we'll make the recommendation at the board work session on August 5th. Louis, before we close, I know the session runs till 7:30. I just want to be sure that we've answered all the questions that have come through at this time.
Okay, I'll double check and make sure that we've got them.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just look and see if we have. I'm looking now. There's a lot of questions that were repeated. So we tried to grab a sampling from all those. Okay, there's a couple more. Can you specify what you mean when you say the staff has recommended to the board that NFP or North Forest Pines become traditional? Who's the staff that's recommending that change?
That's a good question, and that's the Office of School Choice staff that are making that recommendation, not the school staff at North Forest Pines.
Okay. And then it says here you're using staff interchangeably for school staff, WCPS staff. So we want to just make sure that we're talking about school choice staff, correct? That are making those recommendations.
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Glenn, the question is, if we're going to make the recommendation to make North Forest Pines a traditional school, can you just summarize quickly again, why are we making this recommendation? What prompted us? I mean, what are the maybe 2 or 3 main points that prompted us to make this decision?
Yep. So when you look at the forecast map, that's the arrow map going up and down. Louis, actually, can you go back to that slide where I have the arrow map on the left-hand side and the crowding, the colors on the right-hand side? Go back. 20, keep going down. Yeah, right there.
Oops, 24. Sorry,
24,
slide 24.
Yeah. I think this map is a good visual of how we got to where we are today, right? So when you look at the need for multi-track year-round for the district is for capacity purposes. And so when you look at the map on the left, it is telling us that over the next 10 years, we are not seeing any expected growth all the way from the airport all the way east to Capitol Boulevard. So for the next 10 years, we're not expecting to have any new growth in that particular area. Then when you look at the map on the right, our current projected crowding for those particular schools, from the airport on the left all the way to Capitol Boulevard on the right, you're seeing that they're already underutilized. And so therefore, all the multi-track year-round schools in that particular region are not needed for capacity purposes. So that's kind of how we got to our recommendation today. Because when you look at the arrow map, you see the Wendell area, the Zebulon area in the east, the southeast Raleigh area that goes out towards the Johnston County line, southeast of Garner. Then you look at Fuquay, you look at Holly Springs, Apex, and then parts of Western Cary. You see all of that continued growth, and you see many of the schools in those particular areas have red or orange already. The ones in the western area, the southwest, so Holly Springs, Fuquay, and Apex. Any areas that you see are white are generally just impacted by the opening of a brand new school. So we're able to right size some of the crowding in those particular areas, but we still have continued crowding over the next 10 years. We're going to need to continue to utilize multi-track year-round schools when we open new schools throughout the district, and you saw those schools named in the capital improvement plan. And so with those schools opening on a multi-track year-round calendar, there are additional funds that are required by the district to fund to operate the school on a multi-track year-round calendar. That's the extra months of employment for like the lead secretary, the AP, some other school staff. And so when you don't need to operate the school on a multi-track year-round calendar and you don't need those extra months of employment, that can be shifted to areas where we need them, because we just don't have the funding to continue to build new schools fast enough and on the traditional calendar in certain parts of the county. So therefore, we need those additional funds to deal with the growth.
All right. Thank you, Glenn, for summarizing that. We've had a few more questions added. Many of them are, they're similar to some of the questions we've answered before, Glenn. But I will ask. There's a question here. Are there any other parts of the county where the school assignment staff is, the school choice staff is considering making year-round to traditional? Are we the only areas being looked at, or are there other areas that possibly are going to be considered for, year-round to traditional conversion?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out on my end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So are there any other parts of the county that being considered, or are we the only part of the county that's considered for year-round to traditional conversion? Are we looking at any other parts of the county to make up for this fund discrepancy or the lack of resources to build new schools and basically just utilize our resources, responsibly? Where else are we looking?
And I think when parents get the chance to go, or staff get the chance to go to the link that I provided, or to go to the board materials from the June 10th Facilities Committee meeting, that presentation, which I've also hyperlinked in here, really gives you a good outlook as to, for 27, 28 school year and beyond, who are the schools or the areas that we're looking at where we have multi-track year-round schools, where we don't have the long-term needs for those. So that's a good start. If you go back and actually watch the Facilities Committee meeting and then also some of the work session presentations, you can see and hear some of the questions that the board members have asked. There are some other schools that are operating on different calendars that they've asked us to consider looking at changing as well. We do have some schools on traditional calendar in overcrowded areas that we're looking to convert to year-round. And so it's just something that the district is going to continue to look at. We have to utilize our resources where we need them because the funding just isn't there.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So I'm looking to see if we have any other questions that we have not addressed. There is a question on here, Glenn, about the thought exchange. It looks like there's a little bit of a difference between the ratings from 723 to 722. And just to answer that question, I have it in front of me. The numbers displayed on the slide combine the participants from both staff and parents. So that's the difference that you're seeing. So they want to know what the discrepancy was between the, yesterday, 722, when we had 4,503 ratings as opposed to 3,294 ratings. And the difference is, that the slide that's displayed combines, once again, the participants from both staff and parents. And staff are 49% participants as of today.
Thank you for clarifying, Lewis.
Okay. All right. At this time, we've looked at the questions. I don't see any new questions so I think at this point, we just want to say thank you so much for showing up tonight. Please use the thought exchange. Please continue to share your thoughts. As we said, the board will be meeting on August 5th. We will make our recommendations, but the decision has not been made yet. So once again, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. And we look forward to reading through your the information you provide and just continuing to interact with you and as you help us make this tough decision. So thank you very much. You all have a good night.
Thank you.